Welcome into Doak Campbell Stadium, where Florida State goes down 27-10 to Miami in a game that really never felt like much of a game. I mean, Miami gets out to a 7-0 lead pretty much right off the bat, the first 5 minutes of the game. Florida State, just you could tell the way they played offensively, they were going to have no answers. They got sacked 9 times. Yeah. Cam Akers was bottled up. The wild cam was not real effective. It was more effective than anything else, but nothing was very effective. Florida State falls to 4-5 on the season. They've now lost to really, if you consider Clemson a rival, which I think most people do, not a traditional rival, but they are a rival. Florida State now is 0-5 under Willie Taggart in rivalry games. And
I feel like they're heading towards an 0-6
and
too,
it looks
my
like
man.
It's probably going to be 0-6. So this is a situation I think right now. We'll talk big picture. We'll also talk about some specifics of the game. This fan base has got to be as down right now as it's been in a long, long time, really since the end of Coach Bowden's tenure.
Is it anger or apathy? I mean, they're both dangerous.
And when you lose to Miami, it's probably anger, but it'll settle into apathy.
Yeah, and you're going to see at that Alabama State game, there might be 11 people here. There's just going to be nobody here. There was, 63,000 today? That's what they announced, which was probably about right. I thought it was a pretty good crowd, and that shows where this program is right now when you're looking at a crowd of 63,000 for the Miami game and saying, yeah, they turned out. Florida State fans turned out. They just don't believe in this coach. They don't believe in this program. They don't believe in this coach right now. They don't think he's the right guy for the job. I don't think anybody in this stadium today, maybe including players on his sideline, know for sure that he's the right guy for the job. I'm sure there are plenty of guys on the sideline, in the locker room, maybe in the administration, that are wondering where you go from here.
Yeah, I think maybe at best case scenario, some people are still hoping that Willie Taggart shows something in these last few games of this regular season.
He's running out of chances.
And again, I guess we'll go straight to the big picture. We'll go back to the small picture, and what happened in this individual game. But from a big picture standpoint, yeah, I mean, the only question to me right now for Florida State's administration isn't whether or not they think he's done a good job. The question is whether or not they feel like they can make a move this early in his tenure. You're not really going to have another opportunity. You're not going to beat Florida most likely in the last game of the regular season. Your only chance to show any improvement this season over last season would be to beat Boston College, because you're going to beat Alabama State. That would at least get you a bowl game. But again, you've gotten beat by all of your rivals for the second year in a row. You lost at home to a Miami team that's lost this season to Georgia Tech, barely beat Central Michigan, and you weren't really all that competitive. It got to a 7-point game in the second half, but really this game, Miami dominated Florida State in every category in Tallahassee with a first-year head coach in Manny Diaz and a team that was said to be rebuilding. By their own count, is rebuilding. So it's a bad situation.
To me, it felt a lot like a loss from last year. Those losses where it was just like running into a brick wall. You had no chance offensively. You just didn't have a chance. And look, the offensive line has been a little bit better this year, but that was an embarrassment, man. That's an embarrassment to be just completely annihilated like that, to not even be competitive. Those guys were just not competitive. They went to chop blocks when they must be the worst chop blocking team in history. I don't even know if they know what that means. They might just think it means you dive at the ground.
Cut blocking,
yeah, not chop blocking. Why not start chop blocking?
Maybe that would be the answer.
So they can't call it every time. But yeah, the cut blocking, I don't even know if they know what that means, because they just dive at the ground and it's just a jailbreak towards Hornibrook. And yeah, I mean, they could have played Blackman. If we're going to get specific, they could have played Blackman more. Would it have mattered? I don't know. Maybe he would have taken some shots downfield at least, but Hornibrook didn't throw it more than 6 yards downfield the whole game. But they can't block. They can't block those guys. They wilt. I don't think that offensive line is the worst in Power 5 like it was last year. And yet, when they play any defense with a pulse up front, they wilt. And they just completely got embarrassed. I thought they cowered a little bit. They were soft, quite frankly. And I just think that's not a breaking news that they're not very good up front.
And it also doesn't excuse anything. Miami's got some limitations up front as well. Their offensive line has not been good all season, but they found a way to move the ball. Florida State, I don't understand, when you know that Alex Hornibrook doesn't have a great arm and you know your offensive line cannot block at all, why you've got plays that are taking that much time to develop. I mean, there's no way. And Willie Taggart said it wasn't on the quarterback when he was asked about whether or not he would go James Blackman. And I don't think the quarterback would have changed very much. I mean, they were going to lose that game either way. But, at least you got to get the ball out of his hands quicker. You got to come up with some things to slow down that pass rush. Maybe more of the screen game. It's just nothing. It didn't seem like they were really. They had no answers, but it also didn't seem like they tried that many other things.
No.
The wild cam didn't work. Willie admitted that Cam had a toe injury. We saw him during the week walking with a boot, and he was asked about it on Tuesday, I believe. Monday or Tuesday, and he said the Cam was fine. But he apparently had a toe injury, so that limited him a little bit. They also, some of the changes we had seen on the offensive line, they kind of went back to the old way.
Yeah.
Andrew Baselli did not start. Bavion Johnson, I think, played just about the whole game. I don't know if Baselli, we didn't get to ask Willie if Baselli's hurt or what the deal is there. Cole Minshew, who has given some life to the offensive line the last couple weeks, he came out pretty early. They went back to Brady Scott. So you kind of went back to, as you said, kind of the old look to this offensive line. I think the other disappointing thing to me is on the defensive side of the ball. I did not expect Florida State's offense to do very much in this game. We know how good Miami's defense is. Florida State's defense did not get a lot of pressure on Jaron Williams. He's a solid quarterback if he's got time, and he had all day on some of those throws.
Yeah, no, they weren't very good at all. I mean, they were bringing 4 and 5 guys, and they still couldn't get to him. Couldn't even get close to him a lot of times. Yeah, man, it was just a disaster of a game. Miami isn't that good. This isn't a Miami team that's any good at all. They're a 7 or 8 win team at best. Like Ira said, they had lost to Georgia Tech. In all their wins, they had won by 3 or 4 points. I mean, this is their first 17-point win, I don't know, since 2001. They don't beat anybody by this much. So yeah, man, it's just really disappointing. I think when you look big picture, again, you're right to wonder, is this the right guy? I know it's whatever it is, 21 games into his career. That's a small sample size. Well, man, sometimes if you take a drink of something and it tastes bitter right away, you don't have to keep drinking it. And that's what the administrators have to come up with. That's what they have to figure out, is if they think this thing is going to get better. Because if they don't, if they know in their minds that this isn't the right thing, because you can't look at this season compared to last season and say right now at 4 and 5 that there's been any improvement.
Well,
Taggart was even asked. He's like, well, if you look at some of the statistics, we've improved. Well, okay. Well, the biggest one is the win-loss record. And you're 4 and 5 just like you were last year. You're at least going to have 6 losses. And depending on what you want to go do in 35-degree weather at Boston, you're going to have 7 again. So I don't know that you can look at this season and say, okay, they're making a nice, steady improvement, 1 foot in front of the other. 2020 is where they're really going to take off.
To go with your analogy, though, about the drink that doesn't taste very good, if you spent $30 million on that drink, you may want to go ahead and finish it.
You would say you at least take some sips.
I know you're just throwing it away.
You're not going to throw it in somebody's face. That's a good point.
Money on that drink.
An expensive drink.
I don't expect anything's going to happen immediately with Willie Taggart in terms of his job security. But, man, I just don't know. I don't know that there's anything other than beating Florida that's going to give Florida State's administration a feeling that things are heading in the right direction. So then it just comes down to, are you willing to make a change or not?
Yeah. Well, can you afford to, and can you afford not to? Those are the two questions, because you're already behind Florida. It feels like I know they lost to Georgia. Everybody's a Georgia fan today, in Tallahassee at least. They lost to Georgia, but you almost feel like you're getting lapped by them. And now the Slappies from Coral Gables have beat you 3 years in a row, 2 years. They came back from a 20-point deficit, and this year they come into your house. They have 5,000 or 6,000 fans making all that noise. I mean, there's an indignity that went with this.
Yeah, well, like I said, it just didn't seem competitive. Even when it was a 7-point game, you never felt like Florida State was on the same level, certainly not better than Miami. And again, that's a team that's in a rebuilding phase with a first-year head coach. The next step of it, though, from terms of when the administration has to make their decision, a lot of it's going to look at recruiting, because you guys made the point earlier this week. I think you made the point last week when I wrote the story about how few coaches get fired after their second season, and it's only been 4 in the Power 5 in the last 20 years. The difference right now for Florida State is the one thing in Willie's favor so far has been recruiting has been decent. They have a top 15 recruiting class. You have to wonder how this impacts that.
Yeah.
This was supposed to be a really huge recruiting weekend with several official visits. That didn't happen. A couple of them got postponed. So I think they only had 1 official visitor. You have to wonder how things went with the guys who are committed. And I think a lot of the guys that committed during the summer, they had 9 commitments over the summer. A lot of those guys did it with hope that this season would kind of validate that, and that hasn't happened. So now can you hang on to those guys going into that December early signing period? That's going to have a big impact as well.
And as this class, right now, I know it's 11th or 12th or whatever it is, which is nothing to sneeze at, but at Florida State it kind of is. I mean, they get these things all the time. Is it pedestrian enough that you would risk blowing up a recruiting class if you think big picture-wise it's the best thing for your program? Because you never want to lose a whole recruiting class, and you would lose a lot of those guys. Whoever you brought in would have to really work to get some of those guys back. But is it worth it? Is it worth it to, I remember when Leonard Hamilton 3 or 4 years ago, whenever that was, when people were screaming for his job, And it's like, well, Jonathan Isaac's coming in. You don't want to lose Jonathan Isaac because you want to rebuild. It's not time for that. I don't know if this is one of those classes.
Yeah, I don't think there's no Jonathan Isaac on the. I mean, Jeff Sims is a nice player, quarterback, but I don't think what they've got. Even if they hold on to what they've got, and I think that's a big question right now. I don't know if that's enough to make you to weigh heavily into the decision. Now, if it falls apart, that could factor more into the decision. Bottom line is, I don't think this is a game that ends Willie Taggart's tenure. I don't think there's going to be a change immediately after this game, but I do think the difficult decisions that FSU's administration was trying to avoid by having a solid finish to the season, those aren't going away. They're going to have to make a really difficult situation.
And you're not saying a nail's in the coffin, but is there a nail like being screwed
Sized
in a
up?
little, sized up for a hole to hammer in? What do you think?
Well, I
For
mean,
real?
I think if you go and lose to Boston College, and if you
go
don't
get blown out at Florida,
and you don't go to a bowl game, I think there's a good chance that they're going to have to make a change. I mean, it's not even a matter of whether or not it's fair. At that point, it's what can you salvage going forward, and what are these stands going to look like next year? As you said, we felt good about this crowd because it was 63,000, but 63,000 is not even. It's like 4/5 of capacity, barely 80% of capacity. So what's going to happen next season when you go into games coming off of two consecutive 5-7 seasons, and really you look at the wins and you look at the losses, and you wouldn't feel like there's been any growth. So, yeah, I think if they lose, Boston College now becomes kind of to me, it's a game. I don't think it could save Willie Taggart. I still think they're going to have a tough decision to make. But if you lose to Boston College and you get blown out by Florida, I don't know if the decision's there anymore to make it. Or not.
It doesn't sound like it'd be a hard one. Because how do you sell it otherwise? If you go 5-7 again, losing to all your rivals, getting blown out by Miami, probably getting blown out by Florida and Clemson again, how do you salvage? How do you sell that to your fan base?
And we've given this, we'll wrap up in a second, but we'll give this team credit for not rolling over when they've had opportunities to this season. But this is a whole nother level.
Yeah.
Because any really hope you had for a big win this season is gone. Now you got to go on the road to Boston College, a team that just ran for like 6 billion yards against Syracuse. It's going to be a very physical game in really cold weather. So it just doesn't look like a good situation. Maybe they'll turn it around, but if they don't, again, we expect Florida State to have some tough decisions to make at the end of the season.
And one last stat real quick, because this I think is what really troubles fans the most. Maybe not this stat because you don't know it. But since Florida State was up on Miami, if we want to count Clemson as a rival, which we do, they're a rival. Since Florida State was up on Miami 27-7 last October, whenever that is, Florida State's been outscored by their rivals since then, since that 20-point lead, 197-37. Anyway.
Signing off from Doak Campbell Stadium. We'll see you next time.